Right now, this is our time in the studio with Carolina Corral. Welcome, Freedom viewers, and let's get straight to the important news. This morning, Russian forces shelled a market in Druzhkivka, Donetsk region with cluster munitions. According to preliminary reports, at least 7 people were killed and another 15 were injured. This was reported by Vadim Falashkin, head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. All those injured are receiving the necessary medical assistance. Rescue services, bomb disposal experts, medics, and police are working at the scene. The number of injured has risen to 12. As a result of Russian strikes on Zaporizhzhia the day before, 4 children are among the wounded. The Russian army also killed 2 residents of Zaporizhzhia. The drone exploded near a supermarket, injuring shoppers and passers-by. Parked cars near 4 neighboring 9-story buildings caught fire, and windows were blown out. A report covers how the city is dealing with the aftermath.
This is a memorial organized by the residents of Zaporizhzhia at the site where 18-year-old Stepan and Sofia died. Russian troops killed them on the evening of February 3rd on one of the city's streets. People bring flowers and children's toys here. Friends of the victims came to light candles.
They were very cheerful and full of life. They had been together for a very long time. It's such a shame that this happened.
Stepan and Sofia were walking down the street when a Russian drone exploded nearby. The couple died on the spot. The medics couldn't save them. After the Russian drone strike, cars caught fire in a nearby parking lot. The blast wave shattered shop windows and blew out windows in neighboring apartment buildings.
I can't even put it into words for you. I realized the windows were falling, the glass. The glass blew out here, in the apartment.
12 people were injured by shrapnel, including 4 children. The victims suffered blast injuries, wounds, and concussions. The local administration is convinced that the Russian military deliberately attacked a residential neighborhood.
We're seeing casualties among military infrastructure. There is no military infrastructure, no military equipment at all. These are civilian stores. People are buying groceries for dinner. And then the explosion. There's a children's hospital nearby. The windows and glass were blown out there too, in the children's hospital. Since
early morning, city utility crews have been clearing debris from the impact sites. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to terrorize Zaporizhzhia. They attack with drones and missiles. After yet another such strike, around noon, the power went out in one of Zaporizhzhia's districts. Oleg Pritikin, Boris Yakovenko reporting from Zaporizhzhia for Freedom TV channel.
5 people were injured in Odesa. After the Russian nighttime attack with strike drones, more than 24 houses and educational institutions in the city were damaged. Fires broke out at several locations. For more details on the aftermath of this Russian attack, watch Ksenia Satinska's report.
Yelena Ivanovna looks at her destroyed apartment. A warm robe is literally all the woman has left after the Russian attack. The strike drone hit right in the room where she was sleeping. She still can't recover from what happened.
You see, this is my room. It flew in, hit the wall, and destroyed everything. I was in the room on the bed, in that corner by the window. Metal and just debris fell on me. Sticks, a beam pinned my light down, but not so much that it hurt me.
The epicenter of the strike was a 2-story building in a private sector of Odesa. The blast wave blew out the windows in the nearby houses. And in Irina's apartment, the door was blown off. The woman can't hold back tears when she remembers the horror she went through that night.
We can't even imagine that this is it. And now, what will happen to us next? We calmed down a little, took some drops to relax. That's it, nothing else. No. Where will we stay? Of course, we'll spend the night at home, because I don't know if the door will close or not. Where do we go, and where do we even start? Sorry, of course, that it's like this. What else can I say? Murtaugh, it's just so scary now. It's terrifying, absolutely horrifying. Words can't describe it. How was it? How did it explode, and what was it like? It felt like a nightmare. A nightmare? You went to Russia, but this is real life.
The Russian army attacked Odesa around 3 in the morning when the whole city was asleep. The aftermath of the attack was recorded in 3 districts of the city. According to the city council, more than 24 houses were damaged.
It just flew right in. It landed and there was water in the house. Of course there was an explosion. Everything started collapsing. It was terrifying. Well, thank God there were no fires.
In addition to residential buildings, educational institutions were also affected. Windows were blown out in 2 kindergartens and a lyceum. Emergency and municipal services are working at the impact sites, helping people to cover up broken windows and clean up the aftermath of the night attack on the city as quickly as possible. Ksenia Sitinskaya, Zarab Tadalori from Odesa for Freedom TV channel.
Night on February 4th, Russian forces attacked Ukraine with T-5 strike drones of various types. And as reported by the Ukrainian Air Force, these were drones of different types: Shahed, Gerbera, and Tomaz. The enemy launched them from the territory of Russia, as well as from temporarily occupied Donetsk and Crimea. The attack was repelled by aviation, anti-aircraft and missile forces, electronic warfare systems, and mobile fire groups. According to preliminary data, 88 Russian drones were destroyed or suppressed by electronic warfare systems. The massive shelling of Ukraine cost Russia nearly $325 million, February 3rd. That's $190 million more than the previous large-scale attack, which took place on January 20th. These figures were reported by the main intelligence directorate, which noted that more than 79% of the aggressor's resources were wasted since Ukrainian air defense destroyed 450 aerial targets. Let me remind you, on the night leading into Tuesday, the Russian army carried out a combined strike on CHP and TPP plants that provide heat to Ukrainian cities. Kharkiv, Dnipro, Kyiv, Vinnytsia, Odesa, Pavlograd, and Zaporizhzhia came under fire. The Ukrainian embassy provided the U.S. State Department with detailed information about the Russian shelling that occurred after Moscow announced a pause. These were strikes on the energy infrastructure. This was reported by Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Olga Stefanishina, and according to her, the information was prepared jointly with the armed forces and the Ministry of Energy, and in particular concerns the nighttime shelling, February 3rd. The ambassador expressed confidence that this data would influence the negotiations as it undermines Russia's position. France will deliver 150 generators to Ukraine this month. This was announced by the country's Minister of Trade, Nicolas Ferrasier. Also, according to him, Ukraine will receive 71 million euros over the course of a year for infrastructure restoration. The funding will be allocated gradually, and investments could reach 200 million euros in just 2 years.
Our idea is to support projects that allow for quick action and provide rapid responses to recovery needs. Funding of 71 million euros will be approved. This year, a competition for relevant projects will be announced, and French companies will be able to choose how to participate, taking into account the priorities of the Ukrainian government collected on the DREAM platform. Nicolas Ferrasier, Minister of Trade of France.
Ukrainian tank crews thwarted an attempt by Russian troops to gain a foothold near the village of Hryshin in the Pokrovsk district. This was reported by the 7th Air Assault Corps. According to the military, after a failed assault, part of the enemy infantry took cover in residential houses and waited for reinforcements. The Russian occupiers were quickly detected, after which a tank crew was brought in to handle the situation. A Leopard 2 from the 155th Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after Anna of Kyiv. With precise tank fire, the enemy's cover was destroyed, and the remaining Russian paratroopers were eliminated. The occupiers' attempt to gain a foothold in the Hryshin area failed. In March, Ukraine will begin receiving liquefied natural gas from the United States, transiting through the Balkans, Romania, and Moldova. This was reported by Reuters. The supplies will pass through the Greek LNG terminal. The agreement was signed back in November last year. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine noted that this is a mutually beneficial cooperation. American business supports Ukraine's energy security. Earlier, Greece agreed to import 700 million cubic meters of American LNG per year starting in 2030. Estonia detained the container ship Baltic Spirit in the Baltic Sea. The vessel was traveling from Ecuador to St. Petersburg and may be linked to smuggling. The operation was carried out by the Estonian Tax and Customs Board, Police and Navy. The crew consists of 23 Russian citizens and did not offer any resistance. According to the Navy, the Baltic Spirit is not part of Russia's shadow fleet and is not under EU sanctions. For now, it remains at anchor, after which it'll be sent to port for a thorough inspection of all containers. More than half of European Union citizens are concerned about conflicts and wars near the EU's borders. This is evidenced by survey data published by the European Parliament. According to the study, 72% of Europeans are worried about active wars near the European Union. At the same time, almost 90% of respondents support the unity of EU countries, and the majority, 62%, consider their country's EU membership to be positive. 2 Russian satellites intercepted communications over Europe and attempted to access confidential data. This was reported by the Financial Times. We are talking about the Luch-1 and Luch-2 satellites, which over the past 3 years have been tracking European spacecraft and making suspicious approaches in orbit. According to the publication, since its launch, Luch-2 has approached at least 17 satellites belonging to European countries. The German Space Command stated that both devices are suspected of signal intelligence, and the lack of encryption for some data makes European satellites vulnerable to interference. The European Commission is aware of Russia's attempts to intercept signals from European satellites. This was stated today at a briefing by European Commission spokesperson Tamara E., commenting on the Financial Times publication, that Russian space vehicles are trying to intercept signals from satellites belonging to European Union countries.
First of all, I can confirm that this has been a long-standing practice by Russia. There's nothing new here. Of course, working against European space assets or satellites is something Russia has been doing for many years, if not decades. So there's nothing new here. We are very well aware of this issue. What exactly are we doing to protect our space assets in light of such potential attacks? Well, first of all, we have Galileo, which already exists and is capable of detecting and preventing them. We have recently taken another step forward in our 4 European flagship projects. We have also included the European Space Shield, which we are proposing and will deploy together with our member states. This is specifically to protect our satellites and space assets. So, nothing new. We know that Russia's doing this, and we're ready to counter it if necessary.
The real inflation rate in Russia is significantly higher than the Kremlin's official data. This is stated in a report by the Institute for the Study of War. Analysts note that food prices in Russia have increased by a quarter. This contradicts dictator Putin's claims of inflation being around 5 to 6%. The Kremlin distorts economic statistics to hide the consequences of the war against Ukraine, the sanctions, and also the increase in military spending. Experts also point out that the VAT increase has directly impacted the population and only worsened inflationary pressure. Another round of negotiations on ending Russia's war against Ukraine is ongoing in Abu Dhabi. First, there will be a separate meeting between the Ukrainian side and the American representatives, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. The key topic there will be security guarantees for Ukraine. After that, a trilateral meeting is scheduled with Russian representatives authorized to discuss military and political issues. Following the negotiations, the Ukrainian delegation will report the results to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. At the same time, work continues on a recovery and economic development package for Ukraine with the participation of Europe and the United States. This document is already in its final stage and may be signed in the near future. The composition of the Russian delegation at the negotiations in Abu Dhabi on February 4th through 5th remains unchanged compared to the previous round. It will once again be headed by GRU chief Igor Kostukov, as reported by the press secretary of the Russian dictator Peskov. And this indicates that Moscow does not plan to change its negotiation tactics. It continues to rely on representatives from the security and economic sectors rather than on traditional diplomacy. The new round of negotiations took place just 1 day after a massive Russian air attack on Ukraine, and in particular on its energy facilities. The day before, Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that after the shelling, he adjusted the work of the Ukrainian delegation in Abu Dhabi. And according to him, the strike very clearly demonstrates what is needed from partners and what can help. The priority is the timely delivery of missiles for air defense systems and pressure on Russia, without which Volodymyr Zelenskyy is convinced this war will not end.
Russia must feel the pressure so that they comply with the requests of their partners and actually move toward peace in the negotiations. So far, only Ukraine is expected to make concessions, but Russia must also make concessions, and the most important one is to stop the aggression. The one who started the war must take steps toward de-escalation and ending the war. If that doesn't happen, and so far it hasn't, every Russian strike hits not just our energy sector. If not just our cities and communities being hit in minus 20 degrees, every strike also hits those leaders who talk to Russia and, in return, get more war from them. The war needs to be ended. But if the world, if America, if Europe don't have the strength to stop Russian strikes, then who will believe that there's any real power to guarantee that the war truly won't happen again? We need steps that'll build trust in everything happening between the different sides, right now. And there needs to be pressure so that Russia has a reason to invest in diplomacy, not in a war of destruction.
The Ukrainian side expects, first and foremost, to see what kind of feedback the Russians will bring from the meetings in the United Arab Emirates. This was reported by the spokesperson of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Georgy Tykhy. According to him, after the previous round of negotiations, the Russian representatives had time to coordinate their positions with their leadership and to report on the positions of the Ukrainian side. Tykhy also noted that Kyiv, for its part, will strive for de-escalation in order to make diplomacy more successful.
The focus of these negotiations will be, above all, military and military-political issues. This is evident from the composition of the delegations meeting there. There are many nuances in how the end of the war, which Ukraine is interested in, could hypothetically take place. I want to emphasize once again that Ukraine is approaching this process constructively and is interested in ending the war, in finding real steps and ways to stop the bloodshed. And these nuances, of which, I repeat, there are quite a few, will be discussed there in Abu Dhabi. In addition, of course, humanitarian issues remain in focus. And I know that our negotiating team continues to work as intensively as possible to advance humanitarian issues. First and foremost, of course, prisoner exchanges.
Negotiations between the delegations of Ukraine, the U.S., and Russia may yield a more promising result than previously expected. This was reported by the publication Politica. According to the publication sources, there are signs that the current negotiations in Abu Dhabi may be more constructive. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer held a phone conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump. The conversation, or rather the communication, took place after Russia's massive overnight strikes on Ukraine on February 3rd. Keir Starmer noted the particular severity of the attacks and emphasized that these were cowardly strikes carried out at temperatures below minus 20 degrees Celsius.